Alright, so let's get started. Hello everyone, this is Naman and I cheerfully welcome you all to this lecture number 51 of PSIR lecture series. And today, as you can see on the board, we are going to discuss one of the very profound political thinker, that is Hannah Arendt. She is very much labeled as inconsistent philosopher. Her ideas are complex, and sometimes students often complain about the complexities in her idea, which puts student in very difficult position to understand her ideas. So let me tell you everyone why Hannah Arendt is very important for us. Hannah Arendt becomes very important for us in today's present relevance. Why? Because today is the pervasive time or period of a political world. A political world. A political world. So, sir, what is a political world? A political world is a ignorance of politics. Ignorance of politics. What is ignorance of politics? So, to elicit this idea of a political world, let me tell you a story. Recently, I and my friend were sitting on a lobby. We were discussing about some modern ideas on technologies and etc. I just wanted to have a perspective of his on one political idea, which was very relevant to our country, that is India, in today's time. The 2024 general election is on the verge, right? On the same topic, I just wanted to know what was his opinion. My friend response exalted me. He baffled me with the response that I don't have any business when it comes to politics. I am not at all interested in politics. Don't talk politics with me. I get annoyed, irritated if someone talks politics with me. This is what a political world looks like today, people. And especially in our country, that is India, it is pervasive. Every 1 in 3 people or 4%, they will seems to be apolitical, despite knowing the fact that politics deeply influences their life and day-to-day activity. And this is what a political world is, and this is where the importance of Hannah Arendt, or thinker, profound thinker like Hannah Arendt, that comes into the picture. She clearly tells to the audience, she clearly tells to the readers of her work that apolitical sentiments, apolitical, or she terms it like laziness. Political laziness is something which gives rise to the totalitarianism. Totalitarianism. You might be knowing what totalitarianism is, right? The one, you remember the Nazism in Germany, the Stalinism in Russia, USSR, right? These are some of the fascist totalitarianism which were very much prevalent in the early 20th century in the world, majorly in Europe. And she gives the cause of apoliticalism, a political approach, or a political thinking of the people as a cause. And thus she propounds the idea of vita activa, that is active participation of human beings in the political realm, in order to have a very healthy notion of politics, and also promote the human essence in the form of democratic ideals that are liberty, equality, freedom, etc., which makes human differentiated, unique from the animals. So this is what a gist of Hannah Arendt looks like, which we are going to dive deeper into the further course of lecture. Right? So after attending Hannah Arendt, one thing for sure you will get insight is of the idea of active participation in the politics. How important it becomes for each and every one of us to actively participate in the political realm. so as to eliminate any advent or rise of totalitarianism. Despite we know that ignorance is bliss, it becomes very, very important for majority of the people that if we do not actively participate in the politics, the ignorance of politics can lead to the exploitation, right? And this is what Hannah Arendt works teaches the political enthusiast, right? So what is the relevance of Hannah Arendt for PSIR exam, right? So you can see few questions that has been asked from Arendt political thought, right? So the first question is critically examine Hannah Arendt's conceptual triad of labor, work, and action. We are going to see this idea of labor, work, and action in her concept of on human condition, right? This is also one of the very, very famous philosophical work of Arendt, which majorly talks about the importance of human action, the concept of vita activa that I have just introduced to you all, right? So how important it is for human beings to actively engage in the political realm. That is the idea behind the concept of vita activa of Arendt, right? The second question is discuss Hannah Arendt's analysis of the role of ideology in the modern totalitarian regime, right? This question basically comes from her book that is on the origin of totalitarianism, right? We are going to have a very, very in-depth analysis and lecture on this particular topic, that is on the origin of totalitarianism, because this is one of the very, very fascinating concept that comes from Hannah Arendt, right? And the third is power is never the property of individual. It belongs to a group and remains in existence only so long as the group keeps it together. Again, this is also the basis of the idea on the origin of totalitarianism, right, that we are going to discuss. So these are some of the questions, right? As you can see, every other year the question has been asked from Hannah Arendt, and it becomes very, very important for us, right, to know, because Arendt is one of the very, very relevant thinker when we talk about the present political context. It becomes very, very relevant for each and every one of us. All right, so with this, let's get started, everyone. All right, so first we are going to look at the introduction, that is the life and time of Hannah Arendt, who she was. As the Lasky says that every thinker is a child of his or her time, right? So it becomes very, very important for us to know the life and time of Hannah, right, the Hannah Arendt, so as to know her political influences and political ideology, and the influenced the situation that had on her, right? So Hannah Arendt, a prominent 20th century political theorist, right? Her lifespan looks from 1906 to 1975, right? So she basically was a part of major situation that were taking shape in the world in throughout the 20th century, right? And if we talk about Nazism to Stalinism and etc., even the emergency, right, which is also one of the example of totalitarianism that we can talk about. And Arendt was one of the very, very prominent propounder of totalitarianism, right? Again, she talks, basically she criticizes the idea of totalitarianism and how it leads to the extermination of human essence, that is freedom, liberty, and other values, right? So a prominent 20th century political theorist and philosopher, is widely regarded for her profound insight into nature of politics, totalitarianism, and human conditions, right? So basically we are going to see three broad category of ideas when it comes to Arendt, right? So the first we will see is the politics, right? So majorly we will discuss her ideas on revolution, right, on revolution. Then we will look at the idea of totalitarianism, This is again one of the very original concept of Hannah Arendt, right? And the third is on human conditions. What is on human condition? This is basically the philosophical work of Hannah Arendt, which basically talks about the importance of human action, that is vita activa, that we have just mentioned, right? So totalitarianism and on human condition, that this too becomes very important for us to know, right? So her life looks like she was born in Germany in 1906. Okay. Arendt's lives and works were deeply influenced by the tumultuous events of the 20th century, right? Tumultuous events. What does this mean? So let me tell you, friends, Hannah Arendt was a Jew. She was a Jew by birth, right? And we know the atrocities that were committed by Hitler on the Jews, right? Hitler on the Jews. So the tumultuous, the grave situation of Germany, it basically led to the shaping of Hannah Arendt ideology when it comes to politics, right? And from here, she will derive her methodology, that is phenomenology. Phenomenology. What is phenomenology? Phenomenology is basically the methodology which has been derived from the life experiences, right? So when we talk about major political thinker, the political ideas which they propound, they teach, that basically comes from their imagination, people. But when we talk about Hannah Arendt, her ideas are based on her life experiences, right, from the true and real life events, right? That is why her idea becomes very original, her idea becomes very essential, right? Why? Because it has been based in the methodology of phenomenology. We are going to see what a methodology, that is phenomenology, is in the further course of lecture, but just for now, understand that this methodology is derived from the idea of life experiences, right? Whatever happens in my life, by influence from that particular life event, I will derive my political idea, right? This is what a political methodology of phenomenology looks like, right? So tumultuous events of the 20th century, right, like the Nazism in Germany, right? This is the major focal point that Arendt is wanting to address, including the rise of totalitarian regime like Nazism and Stalinism, as well as her own experiences as a Jewish refugee fleeing Nazis persecution, right? We know the persecution of masses, Jews, right, in the concentration camps in Germany, right? So she also had to go through the same experiences, right, which made her to flee from countries to countries in order to save her life, right? That is why she propounds the idea of active participation of people, right? How important it becomes for people to actively participate in the political sphere, so as to eliminate any ignition, any origin of the totalitarian regimes like Nazism, right? If people of Germany would have active in political sphere, they would have realized the grave actions that is being committed by Hitler. They would have never let Hitler to do or to commit such a heinous crime, right? That is why Hannah Arendt proposes to her readers that it is the vita activa, it is the human action that becomes very important, that becomes very basis on which the entire realm of political action is based, right? For democracy to function effectively, to democracy to function efficiently, it is very important for people to actively participate in political realm, to hold the power holders accountable, right? To hold the power, to hold the authorities accountable, right? To hold the authorities accountable. What will happen if if the authorities are not are not hold accountable, it will basically lead to over concentration of power, right? Over concentration of power, and once the over concentration of power will happen, it will lead to again some of the gravest crime or from the regime like totalitarianism that we have seen in the Germany, right? So this is what her life looks like, and now you can have the idea how the tumultuous situation of her life, right, the real events of her life shaped her political thinking, political ideology, from totalitarianism to the revolution, right, to human conditions, right? So this is her ideas looks like, and how the real life events shaped her political thinking, right? So now let's see some of the central themes of Hannah Arendt, right? So Arendt's intellectual contribution span various fields within political science, philosophy, and social theory, right? So one of the very beauty of Hannah Arendt is that, friends, that she do not looks politics in silo. She do not look politics in very unilateral direction. She brings into picture the importance of philosophy, sociology, right, so as to explain the political phenomena of the country, right? So she is basically taking multilateral approach in explaining the events that are taking place in politics, right? She is bringing into the picture the importance of philosophy, the importance of psychology. We are going to see one of the very controversial work of Hannah Arendt, that is Eichmann in Jerusalem. It is also very beautiful. I highly recommend you all that if you ever get a time, go and read this particular piece of book. This is Eichmann in Jerusalem, right? This is basically based in a trial of a bureaucrat, right, in Hitler administration, who was mainly responsible for the commission of genocide, right, of the Jews in the concentration camp, right? So we will discuss, just have a patience for now. We are going to discuss, right? So how multilateral approach of Hannah Arendt beautifies the concept of Hannah Arendt. Okay, so one of the central theme is the exploration of the nature of power and authority in the modern world, right? So one of the very central theme of Arendt's political idea is the nature of power, right? So what are the various nature of power? Totalitarianism, authoritarianism, democracy, and etc. These are varied nature of power and authority. What are the different natures of the authority around the world, right? So in her seminal work, that is The Human Condition, right? Human Condition. This is again a philosophical work. Arendt examines the concept of political action and its significance for human existence. Now, let me throw some light on the human condition. The human condition. Nobody will tell you, friends, no PSIR teacher or political science teacher will tell you this, right? So they will just tell you, when we talk about the human condition, she talks about the concept of vita. She talks about the concept of vita activa. They will tell you this, right? And I will also tell you this, but I will also tell you one of the very essential idea behind the human conditions, right? So they will tell you that vita activa is basically active human participation, active human participation in the political realm, which is very important for the democracy, for the state to function efficiently, right? So as to ensure that there is no totalitarian regime that is having its origin, right? But now just understand the concept of the human condition. Why the term condition, right? Why not simply, as the social contractualist, they talked about the concept on human nature, right? They talked about the concept of human nature, that human nature is basically what? Individualistic, right? Individualistic. She could have also mentioned or taught in the similar manner, right? Because of the power seeking nature of human beings, they always seek power after power, which leads to the what? Which leads to the establishment of totalitarianism, right? If any individual it's getting the power he or she wants, it will ultimately lead to what? The concentration of power, right? Which will ultimately lead to the totalitarian authoritarian regime, right? She could simply said that, but she is saying or mentioning the term that is condition, on human condition, right? Why? So here comes a very, very beautiful idea of Hannah Arendt, friends, right? So condition, why she says condition is that she takes the matter of the fact as that human nature, right? The humans are not static creatures. Humans are not a static creature. What does it mean when I say that humans are not static creatures, right? So now again, come back to the social contractualist or Marx or Hegel, right? They have seen human nature from very, very singular perspective, from very, very universal perspective, that they have directly announced, they have directly proclaimed that human nature is individualistic, human nature is cruel, human nature is nasty, human nature is atomistic, human nature is power seeking, right? They have seen the nature of humans in very, very singular, very, very unilateral manner, right? But here comes the Hannah Arendt, who says that no, it is not true. It is not true the way the social contractualists like Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, or Marx or Hegel, the way they have defined the human nature in very, very static manner, is not basically the true idea. Because human conditions are dynamic, right? Human conditions, human nature are dynamic, right? It is basically based on the condition, right? What is the condition? Condition is the basically the varied situation of human life, varied situation of human life. What does it mean? That the human personality, human nature is shaped because of his or her situation. Human personality, human's attitude, human beliefs, and etc., they are shaped from time to time, right? The person you were in your childhood is not the same person that you are today. Today, whoever you are is basically based on the situation that you have upbringing, right? You have upbringing from. So your upbringing kind of shapes your personality, your perspective, right? Your situation defines your personality, right? So if I have to give you a one word difference between Hannah Arendt and her predecessor, is that she focused her predecessors like Marx, Hegel, Locke, Hobbes, and etc., they very much confined humans to what, right? But Hannah Arendt basically talks about the who of human beings, who they are, right? Because when we talk about who they are, it is basically based on their situational analysis, right? But what is very, very universal idea, what is very, very general idea, right? It is not very much individual oriented or individual specific. But when we talk about the who is very much individual specific, right? We talk about each and every element or the individual in the society, right? This is what Hannah Arendt importance is. She talks about the who, she talks about the human conditions, right? She talks about situations, she talks about various circumstances which shapes the personality of the individual. Now again, apply this idea to her own life, right? She is talking or giving her idea from her own life itself, how different situation shapes her personality, it shaped her political thinking, it shaped her political view of the world, right? So this is what, again, the idea of phenomenology comes into people, right? How her political ideas are being defined from her real life experiences, right? This is what is the essence of phenomenology. That was her methodology, right? So she distinguishes between labor, work, and action, arguing that it is through meaningful political action in the public realm that individuals achieve their fullest expression of humanity, right? So when we will look at her concept of on human condition, we will see what these three, labor, work, and action, see basically specifically distinguishes between the she distinguishes human action into three broad categories, right? The first is labor, the second is work, and third is action. For her, action is the original action. Action is the real action. And what is the action? Action is basically the active participation, active action of human beings in the public realm, right? That individual which helps individual to achieve their fullest expression of humanity, right? So this is the idea of her philosophical work, that is on the human condition, right? The magnum opus. Now comes the magnum opus of Hannah Arendt, and it is basically the origins of totalitarianism, right? So this is one of the very original, very original and very profound work of Hannah Arendt, right? This is why we consider the book that is the origin of totalitarianism as the magnum opus, right? What is the idea in this particular book, right? Why I am discussing all these ideas, people, right? Because it becomes very important to know the gist of our work, right? Because let's say if in tomorrow's lecture I will talk about the concept of on totalitarianism, you will have the idea that this is coming from her work that is on the origin of totalitarianism. You will have the idea what does the term totalitarianism means, right? So today's lecture is mainly focused on giving you the basic premises, the basic ideas of her several works and her life, so that you have the basic idea that where she is coming from, right? So this is what it looks like. So what does the book that is the origin of totalitarianism contains? So she explores the dynamic of totalitarian regimes, right? Emphasizing the role of ideology, propaganda, and erosion of individuality and moral responsibility, right? So just to tell you, basically, she will dissect the nature of totalitarianism. She will completely dissect. She will go to the very deep analysis of the totalitarian regime, right? Why? Because again, her life, right? The concept of phenomenology, right? She herself had undergone the extreme treatments that have been taken by the Nazis regime, right? In order to exploit the Jews, in order to exterminate, in order to eliminate the Jews, right? So she just wants to understand what this atrocities by Nazis, right? Atrocities by Nazis, the mass killing of Jews, why it was caused, right? Why it was caused. Human beings are moral animals. They are social, moral, thinking animal. What led human beings or the authorities in the Nazi regime to commit such a grave or heinous crime, right? She wanted to understand the very basic root of the totalitarian regime, right? And when she done a research on this, right, she has basically she basically came out with the book that is the origin of totalitarianism, right? So this is a very comprehensive analysis of the totalitarian regime, right, which basically talks about the role of ideology, right? That basically the totalitarian regime, they use, right? They use the ideology, propaganda in order to sway, in order to shape the attitude, shape the belief, the faith of the people, innocent people, ignorant people, right? And that is what which led them, right? This is something which makes them commit such a heinous grave crime like atrocities that was committed on the Jews, right? So Arendt insight into mechanism of totalitarianism remains highly relevant for understanding authoritarianism and mass movement in contemporary politics, right? So this is what is the relevant of Hannah Arendt in present political context, right? So if we will understand her concept of totalitarianism, we will somewhere understand the elementary causes or the basics behind the totalitarian regime, so as to ensure that any such regime or totalitarian regime does not take shape in any future course of political right? So this is why her magnum opus, that is on the origin of totalitarianism, is very, very crucial. Again, one of the very, very fascinating work I will say is the Eichmann in Jerusalem, right? This is one of the controversial work of Hannah Arendt, right? That is Eichmann in Jerusalem. It was released in 1963, right? Based on her reportage of the trial of the Nazi war criminal, that is Adolf Eichmann, right? So just to give you a basic story behind this idea is that there was a bureaucrat, right, whose name was Adolf Eichmann. Adolf Eichmann, who was a bureaucrat, who was an administrator under Hitler resigned. Hitler resigned, right? Resigned. So Adolf Eichmann was also a brainchild. He was also a brainchild behind Jews extermination. Extermination, right? You guys might be knowing the idea of concentration camps. Concentration camps, right? The extermination of Jews by placing them in concentration camps and gassing them, right? Gassing them, right? You all might be knowing this. All right. So Adolf Eichmann was the bureaucrat who was responsible, who was brainchild behind that incident, right? So there was a trial which was going on Adolf Eichmann by Israeli state, right? So here the Hannah Arendt, she got the opportunity by a news company in United States to report this entire trial of Adolf Eichmann, right? So she attended all the court proceedings. Hannah Arendt, she got the chance to attend all the court proceedings of Adolf Eichmann, right? Where she got the chance to hear the side of Eichmann as well, right? Which led Hannah Arendt to formulate her idea on the insights that was being given by Adolf Eichmann, right? She basically got to know what led Eichmann to commit such a heinous crime, right? And what she understood was that Arendt argued that Eichmann's crimes resulted not from a wicked or depraved character, right? It is not like that Adolf Eichmann was a depraved or wicked man, right? It is not that Adolf Eichmann was cruel man. It is not that the Adolf Eichmann was cruel man, but from a sheer thoughtlessness, right? From the sheer thoughtlessness. What is thoughtlessness? This is basically the ignorance. It is basically the ignorance. We will see why this ignorance and how strategically this idea of ignorance has been shaped in Adolf Eichmann by the totalitarian regime, right? It is like hacking. It is like hacking of one's thought. Right? So if your thoughts gets hacked by someone, your original thought will get eliminated, right? And you will be in the state of thoughtlessness because your thoughts are being controlled by some external authority, and they will control your action by controlling your thoughts, right? And in Adolf Eichmann's case, who was the controller? He was basically the Hitler and his regime, right? They were basically hacked the thoughts of the administrators. They basically hacked the thoughts of the bureaucrats, right? Which made them commit such a heinous crime. He was simply an ambitious bureaucrat who failed to reflect on enormity of what he was doing, right? He stood at a point where he failed to understand the enormity, the gravity of the crime that he was creating, right? He was giving rise to. He was just an ambitious bureaucrat who wanted promotion, right? And just for the sake of promotion, he followed the orders that he received from his higher authorities, right? So his role in the mass extermination of the Jews epitomized the fearsome word and thought defying banality of evil, right? Banality of evil, again, one of the very, very central idea of Eichmann in Jerusalem that we are going to see in further clarity in the further course of lecture, right? So just know the term that is banality of evil, right? That had spread across Europe at the time, right? Arendt's refusal to recognize Eichmann as inwardly evil, right? So when the trial was finished, Arendt realized that the Eichmann, that was Adolf Eichmann, the brainchild behind the Jewish extermination, was not led by his inwardly evil, right, prompted fierce denunciation from both Jewish and non-Jewish intellectuals. When she concluded that the Eichmann refused, right, she basically refused to recognize Eichmann's inwardly evil as the cause behind Jews' extermination. If I have to put in a simpler terms, right, it is not the inwardly evil of the Adolf Eichmann which led to the extermination of Jews, right? This is what she has concluded. Why? Because it was like Eichmann was in the state of thoughtlessness, right? He was not thinking about the enormity of the crime that he was going to commit. He was just doing whatever the order he was receiving from his seniors, right? And him being an ambitious bureaucrat, he had to follow that, right? Because he wanted to have a good bureaucratic career, right? That is why, because of his thoughtlessness, because of his banality of evil, it led to the such a enormous grave crime of Jews extermination, right? So this was the idea of Eichmann in Jerusalem, right? So what are the significance of democratic ideals, right? So basically, Hannah Arendt, she is also propounding the idea of how significant, how important it is for each and every one of us to promote the democratic ideals, so as to promote the human essence, right? Human beings are not mere animals. We are social animals. We are social animals. We are also political animals, right? If you remember Aristotle, human beings are political animals, right? That is why it becomes very, very important to have a democratic ideals, right? So she also made a significant contribution to the study of democracy and citizenship, right? In the next slide, we are going to see influences, classical influences like Plato, Aristotle, Kant, Immanuel Kant on Hannah Arendt, right, who shaped her political thinking when it comes to democracy and citizenship, right? So in works like On Revolution and Between Past and Future, these are again some of the books by Hannah Arendt. She reflects on the ideals of freedom, plurality, and challenges of democratic governance, right? She basically will emphasize the idea of freedom, right? She will basically tell that the final essence of human beings or human existence is freedom, right? Plurality, right? That is why active participation in political realm becomes very, very important, so as to achieve the ideals of human existence, that is freedom, right? Human beings are freed. Human beings are free creatures, right? So Arendt concept of, and like again, totalitarianism, what it leads to? It leads to the elimination of freedom, right? So freedom, plurality, or so as to say democratic ideals is the values, which is the central, which is very, very central for Hannah Arendt, right? Which is very, very central for Hannah Arendt. So whatever political concepts he will talk about, it will basically to safeguard the democratic values of freedom, plurality, and etc., right? So Arendt's concept of the right to have rights, right? The rights to have rights underscores the importance of political participation and recognition for the protection of human dignity, right? It is the right, it is the human right to have the rights. It is the human right to have the rights, right? That is why we have the provision of writs, right? If you remember writs, we have the provision of writs in our constitution, which safeguards the rights, the fundamental rights. We have a fundamental rights to safeguard our fundamental right, right? Which again comes from the basic idea that human beings have the right to have the rights, right? Because it ensures their democratic ideals. It ensures their human essence, that is freedom, plurality, equality, and etc., right? So this is what is the significance of democratic ideals. Again, some of the classical influences are basically the Plato, Aristotle, and Kant, right? So one of the very basic influence of Kant, right, which shaped her political perspective, is that human beings are end in themselves. Human beings are end in themselves, and they must not be treated as a means to an end, right? So this is what is the importance of human beings she also takes into consideration, right? Which basically shaped her political perspective, right? Again, she derived her idea of totalitarianism, right, from the Plato's idea of philosopher king, right? How over concentration of power in any singular hand can lead to a establishment of totalitarianism, as was in the case of Plato's philosopher king, right? So this is how, again, the concept of citizenship, the concept of active participation. Remember the Aristotle concept that human beings are political animals. Humans are political animals. So ideas of Hannah Arendt's, that is the vita activa, right, on human conditions, that we have just seen, that human beings must actively participate in in the political realm, right? The concept of citizenship, these concepts, these ideas are basically shaped from Aristotle, right? The Aristotle influenced Hannah Arendt's perspective when it comes to human participation and citizenships, right? And Kant's basically the concept of human beings, right? The importance of human beings, that human beings must not be treated as a means, right? Because they are end in themselves. So sir, who is Hannah Arendt, right? You have told us great amount of story, and I agree to that, no doubt, but give me some simplest of the ideas, right? So this will also be a kind of summary for you all, right? And remember these things, because it will help you to attempt these things in your answers as an introduction, right? So who is Hannah Arendt? So she is perhaps the only woman scholar, right? So woman scholar recognized as philosopher, right? Why? Because of the diversity, in her perspective, right? Because of the diversity, because of the variedness, because of the plurality that she have in her ideas, from on human conditions to totalitarianism, on revolution, on democratic ideals, and etc., right? She covers a very diverse topics in her works, right? Which makes her a very significant woman scholar and philosopher, right? She describes her thinking as thinking without barriers, right? Thinking without barriers. We cannot find any limitations, right? She thinks without barriers, right? She goes to the extent, she goes to the boundary, right, where there is no limitations. According to her, she is writing for herself, right? And so makes little effort that the reader can easily understand her ideas, right? So she was basically a lecturer as well in some of the major university across United States. So basically she used to pen down some of the ideas, right, so as to explain explain the students, right? That is why if student finds her idea a little bit complex as well, sometimes complex and hard to understand, right, because of her language, right? She uses Latin terminologies like vita activa, jum politikon, and etc., right? So this is why she sometimes become very elusive and difficult to understand. But don't worry, there is a beautiful connection between her ideas, which I will elicit here in our further course of lecture, right? Just stay tuned and follow the lecture throughout, right? You will find Hannah Arendt one of the very astounding, very influential political thinker, especially in present context, right? Again, we will talk about her methodology, that is phenomenology, basically the ideas derived from the life events, right, life situations. So this is what a methodology of phenomenology is. We will see in the next lecture, right? So with this, we are done with the lecture, people. Thank you so much for watching. And also, if you liked the video, please show your love by subscribing the channel, and also like the video so that it can reach to the maximum audience who deserve it the most, right? With this is your host, guide, and friend Naman signing off until our next lecture. Stay tuned, keep watching, and keep learning. Thank you so much.